Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of Vegans Across the World. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Mike. He is in Newfoundland. He's in St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. Hello, Mike.
Yeah. Hello. Glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. So, today, what I want to do is, first of all, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to give people a little bit of background on where you are and just give them an idea about that area. And let me know, because when I do this, sometimes I don't see it. So let me know if you see my screen.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, great. That worked. See, I'm getting better at this. So I'm going to close up on that a little bit. So here's the United States. Here you are all the way over here.
Yes.
We'll get closer and closer. This is St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. Now, I get a little confused about this. Sometimes you'll see it listed as St. John's, Newfoundland, or you'll see Newfoundland and Labrador. Are they combined somehow, or why don't you let the
Yes.
audience know how that goes?
Yeah, they are the same province in Canada. So there's like a federal government in Canada,
Okay.
and then you have your provincial governments, and the provinces are analogous to the states. So in the United States, you have all the 50 states, and
Yes.
in Newfoundland, it's combined with Labrador to be one province.
Okay.
So
that
Canada
clarifies.
has the 10 provinces and the 3 territories.
Okay.
And Newfoundland and Labrador count together as one province.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So I want to give a little bit of background or a little bit of trivia about the area that you're in. St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada is one of the oldest cities in North America. And you have a street called Water Street that is the oldest street in North America.
Yes.
Now, St. John's is located in the northeastern arm of the Avalon Peninsula and the easternmost city in North America. The largest snowfall ever recorded in one day was 30 inches in April of 1999. I don't know if there's been anything since then. But you have a place you have something called the Grand Concourse, which is a walkway network boasting 125 kilometers of walking trails, linking lakes, rivers, and ponds, and stuff like that. And this I thought was funny. There are more pubs per square foot you have a street called George Street. There are more pubs per square foot on George Street than anywhere else in Canada.
Yes. Yeah, we are very proud of the drinking culture here.
I think that has something to do with the huge Irish population.
Yes, yeah, the ancestry here, it's very rooted in Ireland. We've got some Scotland. We've got some Viking ancestry.
Okay.
So yeah, a mix of Celtic cultures here.
Okay. And then the population is over 500,000 as of the 2019 census. That's the last census I could find. But something I want to mention while we're on the map here is, unfortunately, I'm going to move over here to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. This is where the seal hunt takes place every year.
Yeah, yes,
so
that's true.
You are very near that from here to here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to get back to us. So now what I want to do is just go ahead and ask you, Mike, if you could go ahead and just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what kind of activism you might be involved in.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So yeah, my name is Mike. What I do for work, I'm a mathematics, physics, chemistry, and English tutor.
Wow.
So I tutor mostly high school students, but also I teach a few of the intro-level university courses. My background, I went to a university called Memorial University of Newfoundland. So it's It's one of the best universities in Canada, I've heard. And I studied physics, and then I went to a place called the Marine Institute, which is more of a technical college. It's an offshoot of Memorial University, and I studied robotics there, more specifically remote operated vehicles.
Wow.
So those are the robots that go like in the ocean. They go down into the ocean. And
Yeah, I was going to ask why Marine Institute, so that makes sense.
yes, well, we'll talk about it later, but the culture here, very obsessed with the ocean.
Well, I guess so. I mean, you're kind of on an island, so it makes sense.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and I know from reading up on trivia about the area, I know that it's all rooted in like, settlements from fishing and stuff like that from the Europeans. So yeah,
Yes.
of course it's heavy there.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what kind of that's really interesting all that you do. I mean, I wouldn't understand any of it, but I think it's great. But tell us what kind of activism are you involved in?
Yeah, well, that links to what I studied. So I studied ethics, logic, and philosophy as well. And I also have a couple of years teaching English as a second language from the time I lived in Portugal. So speaking with people has been a skill I've been developing throughout my life. And so the type of activism I do, well, a little bit more about myself first. So I'm 32 years old, and I actually joined the Army, the Canadian Army Reserves, when I was 17.
Oh,
so
wow.
I spent about 5 years there while I was going to university. But when I was around 21, 22, I left the military under some difficult circumstances, and I actually was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome around that time. As a result of the experiences that happened to me there. Wow. And from there, I got involved with autism awareness, so activism and self-advocacy. And that later evolved to my animal rights activism. So what I do now is mostly street outreach and education. So the prime example, doing the Cube of Truth with Anonymous for the Voiceless, where we show footage of what happens in animal agriculture and talk to people, like get their opinions, what they think about it, and then dispel some of the misconceptions that always come up. I do things like where we hand out leaflets and cards, so information about animal sentience, animal agriculture, documentaries they can watch, websites they can go to, any other conversational opportunities I can find. And I'm also involved with other types of street demos. So for example, a couple years ago, we did the Dairy is Scary demo. And just a few weeks ago, we did a demo for Eating Animals Causes Pandemics. So have you heard of this group?
I have actually people that I have been involved with in the past, and I still know they recently did those demonstrations, and I'm very interested actually because at the beginning of the pandemic, I did a little demonstration of my own.
Okay. Yes.
Little impromptu with a bullhorn walking down my street, yelling about the pandemic and how it's a zoonotic disease.
That's it exactly. So just a couple of weeks ago, we were dressed up in the hazmat suits. We had the bullhorn playing the warning message. We had some signs. And
now, while we're talking about this, why don't I just go ahead and ask you? Is that something that, because when I saw it, I was notified of the event basically the day of or the day before. So it's not like I was going to create an event that quickly, but I was wondering, is that something that's like a certain time of year or a certain day of the year, or is that something you can do at any time?
This was, so it was an international demo. So it was organized. We had a group of organizers from the States, the international group, and they organized to hold this demo at like parliament buildings or government places. in, I think, maybe something like 70 cities worldwide. So it was organized in advance, but it's more like a 1 or 2 time thing. We had a few actions that were synchronized with many different cities around the world. So I don't know if they're going to be doing more in the future. This may have been the last one, but it was organized specifically as a response to the pandemic and the opportunity to educate people about how animal agriculture breeds diseases and pandemics.
Yeah. Okay, so a side note, just going back from everything that you've told us, which is extremely interesting. Can I just say kudos for overcoming, your obstacles, from what I understand about Asperger's and autism and all that stuff, to go out and put yourself out there for the animals and to really like just go out and talk to people. That's incredible. It takes a lot of courage. From what I understand, with the disability, I don't know if you call it a disability. I don't want.
No,
I don't
I
want to be
wouldn't.
insulting. What's that?
I don't think it's really a disability any more than being vegan is. Like, you will suffer social disadvantages.
Sure.
But the reason that autistic people suffer social disadvantages is the same reason that vegans do, and the same reason that animals do even. So I think animal rights activism is a very natural extension of autism advocacy. So just picking up the skills to try to deal with people, like, and talk to people when they're so different from myself, I think they translate well into animal rights activism, and trying to deal with sometimes just the completely foreign mentality of people who have been indoctrinated into carnism. So that ideology is just as foreign to me as dealing with neurotypical people as an autistic person. So trying to learn how to communicate, it's a very important skill, and so I felt that growing up this way gives me an advantage. So
Wow.
the problems, the social problems I have from being vegan, they're not really substantially new or different than the problems I already had. So it works out well that way. So
That's
I
pretty
didn't
deep. I like that.
sacrifice the same amount of social privilege that neurotypical people sacrifice by being vegan in a carnivore world, I think.
So, let me ask you, where are you originally from? Did you say that you're originally? I'm not sure. I heard you say where you're originally from. I know you grew up there and went to school there. Did you say you were born and raised there?
Yes, yeah, I was born and raised in St. John's, so I
Okay.
lived here most of my life. Although, I have done a few stints in some other Canadian provinces and other countries.
Yeah, you said you've been to Portugal
Yes,
for
so
an
yeah,
extended amount of time. What
I
brought
went
you
to
there?
Portugal. So it was actually soon after I went vegan, and I was really, um, I don't know, I was disheartened about the complete lack of vegan activism here. So the vegan community here about 10 years ago was almost non-existent. And I was getting really frustrated at my inability to do anything to make a difference for animals. So I wanted to go somewhere else where I felt I could have more of an impact, that had a vegan presence already, and maybe use some of what I learned to come back here and try to establish a vegan community. So I went to Portugal for 5 years, and there I joined up with the activist groups. I participated in a group that was trying to build a physical vegan community where we did things like create vegan businesses, generate our own power, harvest our own food using permaculture principles. So I wanted to be part of that and learn some skills that I could use to come back here and recreate it. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, but I did get involved with a lot of street outreach and developing social groups. So I participated in Cubes of Truth there. I participated in something called the Circle of Silence, which is a similar type of demo where you have people standing in a circle with tape over their mouths and again showing signs and videos of what happens to animals in animal agriculture. And then we had the outreachers who would ask people questions and ask them their opinions on what they saw, and then engage them with information about animal agriculture and about veganism.
So when did you go vegan? How long ago was it?
Oh, it must have been, I think 8 or 9 years ago.
So you said that you moved to Portugal because you were fed up with there was no activism where you were.
Mm-hmm.
You gained skills there and then realized that you were needed back to start up some activism where you're at now. I think that's important.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
See, I think that's important. I understand, like, when you first go vegan, that you want to move to a bigger community for the support and also for to learn. And then you realize that sometimes you're needed back in the smaller areas because that's where the animals need you most because they don't have a voice at all there. But can you tell me, so you first went vegan in St. John's, you moved to Portugal, you gain the experience, you come back years later.
Yes.
Did you see a difference at all? You said you were still a little bit, upset. There's not a huge community there, but was it bigger? What's the differences you saw in the veganism you left and the veganism you came back to?
Okay, yes. So when I left, there was very, very little activism. There was basically no vegan community, and that's why I got so frustrated. But in just the 5 years I spent in Portugal, the vegan community really exploded here and grew exponentially. So what I came back to, instead of being nothing, we actually have a core activist group, maybe say between 30 and 50 people that actually do things like the Cubes of Truth. So we never had Cubes of Truth when I left. And when I came back, the group had already been established and they were doing that on a monthly basis. And we had St. John's Animal Safe. They do a lot of vigils outside a chicken slaughterhouse. And we had other types of demos like I mentioned before, the Dairy is Scary.
Yeah.
And there's a much bigger community of dietary vegans as well, maybe a couple thousand plant-based dieters. Most of them aren't activists, but it's still at the point where they're not afraid to identify as vegans anymore.
Obviously, you're an island, so you have a lot of fishing industry, but would you say there's a lot of farms? Is there a lot of slaughterhouses there?
I would say not a lot. So the population of like Newfoundland and Labrador, so physically, Newfoundland and Labrador is a pretty large place. Like,
well, Labrador obviously is more mainland, and it's much larger, but area.
But the population here is only about 500,000 people. Yeah. So I think we have one of the lowest population densities in the world. I think only like Greenland maybe is more spread out. I think each person here has like a square kilometer of land or something. Most of it is so it's forests and lakes. Like there's a lot of nature here, a lot of opportunity for farmland, but most of it is still wilderness. So in St. John's, though, I'd say the St. John's metro area probably has like 100,000 people. It's probably a fifth of the entire population of Newfoundland and Labrador is concentrated into the St. John's area. It's the capital of the province.
Sure.
So it's a lot more modern here, but there are a lot of rural communities, most of them out around the coast, that have populations of only a few thousand people or less.
Okay. So
yeah, we rely a lot on imports. Most of the food here is imported.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, what like do you from where? I mean, like obviously you're right off the coast of the USA, and you're part of Canada. Where do you largely import your products from, and what do you import? Do you know?
Yeah, the food would be imported from mainland Canada or from the United States mostly.
Okay. I don't really consider too much of that importing. That's just like boating it over. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
but yeah, for example, because of the weather here, so
Sure,
the weather here is very wet, so there's not a lot of sun. It rains a lot, and it's a bit on the colder side, but mostly the humidity and the cloudiness. So it's not conducive to growing fresh produce or fruits. So most of the crops here are root vegetables, things like your potatoes, your carrots,
sure,
turnips, cabbage.
sure.
So that factors heavily into the cultural food here, similar
Okay.
to Scotland and Ireland that have similar climates and also very heavy root vegetables in the
Yeah,
diet.
yeah. That worked right into my next question. So that makes a lot of sense. Um, so how long? You said you've been vegan about 9 years, but
Mhm.
what made you want to go vegan? What I mean, you said that you made a connection with
Mhm.
autism, but did you make that connection
Yeah.
after you made the connection to veganism? Tell me what's flipped that switch for you.
Okay. Yeah. So I did start doing autism activism and advocacy, and that's what led to me recognizing the parallels between the discrimination that autistic people face and the discrimination that non-human animals face for being different in their neurology and their behavior
Yeah.
than neurotypical humans. Uh, so yeah, like most people here on the island, growing up, I wasn't immune to the cultural indoctrination or the propaganda that you get. I'd never heard anything real about veganism. I'd never found any ethical arguments for veganism, no factual information about animal agriculture. I'd never even met a vegan in real life. So the only thing I knew was the propaganda that I was raised on. So that just that cultural indoctrination into carnism. So I was very ignorant and misinformed. Like I grew up believing that by buying animal products, you were actually helping the animals. So you were paying for their care and comforts on an idyllic, farm somewhere where they get to lounge around, to live their lives and graze, and they're protected and fed by the nice farmers. And then when you buy their flesh after they die,
Yeah.
you're paying for the care for the next generation of animals. So I was led to believe that the animals just died of natural causes, and at that point they don't need their bodies anymore. They're already dead. So using them to benefit other animals made sense.
And
So,
cows magically gave milk.
yeah. So I never really thought about that. That I just never
I was
encountered any
raised. Most of
information
us
to
were
the
raised the
contrary.
same way. Yeah.
Yeah. So uh, due to my differences, so I suffered from bullying my whole life. So first in because of my autism quirks and nonverbal behaviors, and I didn't even realize what was going on at first. I didn't realize that there was like this whole code book of nonverbal gestures and tone of voice that everyone instinctively does and recognizes when other people do it. So I had no idea why I had such a hard time socially in school. And then later in the military, when you join the army, the reason that I did was because I was bullied a lot in school and wanted to. I had a chip on my shoulder and a point to prove. So I wanted to become stronger to fight against bullying and help innocent victims. And I thought that the army was the way to do that. So I joined it because I wanted to, uh, like, I developed a really strong sense of justice. And so I wanted to help the innocent and stop the bad guys. But what I actually found was that in the military, all those social problems you have in school are amplified a thousandfold. The army is where the bullies go when they want the license to bully others. They want the power to enforce and dominate others. So I actually had a lot of problems with bullies in the military. And so that's what led to me leaving. Soon after that, I got diagnosed with Asperger's and started doing my activism and advocacy for autistic people. And so at this point in my life, so I had left the military. I had managed to get a job, and I was living on my own in my own apartment for the first time in my life when I was about 23, 24 years old. So I finally had some independence and had learned enough about my condition and how to interact with the world around me to feel like I could make a difference. Like before then, I felt I had no control over anything that was going on around me or the circumstances of anyone else. Basically, it was all stuff happening to me, and I had no agency. But this was starting to change around that time. So I had a steady job. I was finally making my own money and could decide what to do with it on my own. And again, I was in this dark, angsty place where I was questioning everything I knew about the world and my own worldview and paradigms. And I was in the store, I think, for the first time after getting my own apartment to buy food on my own. And it was my own hard-earned money, so what I did with it suddenly mattered. It wasn't someone else controlling me anymore. And I was in the meat aisle, so I think I was looking at steaks or something, and it suddenly dawned on me that this was like a chunk of a dead animal's flesh, that the animal had to die for that flesh to exist. And, I thought about it, and I just couldn't justify it to myself to pay for it. So I thought about the message I would be sending. So now all of a sudden I could send messages to the outside world that might be heard, like what I did could matter. And, I thought about what I was supporting and paying for with my own dollars and, my own agency. And I just realized, everything I was told, I had never really questioned it or looked into it or done any personal research. I had just accepted everything I was told at face value, and I was starting to wonder about if any of it was actually true and what actually happens to animals in animal agriculture. So instead of buying the dead animal flesh, I went home. And I started doing some research for the first time in my life. I had never heard of veganism before, other than, just something you might see in a movie where they have this caricature to mock vegans as, like some spiritual purity type of thing, or the hippie way that vegans are often portrayed in the media. So I didn't know anything about actual veganism, but I looked it up online. I started to do research and about what actually happens in animal agriculture, and basically that was it. So it was completely overnight for me. Once I actually encountered information about veganism and like the logical and ethical arguments and just the facts about human biology and about animal sentience, what they can think and feel, and about what animal agriculture does to them. And
but what I liked that you said earlier was that it was your sense of justice that kicked in.
Like everything I encountered, all the arguments, I just read them and found, I agree with that. Why haven't I thought about this before? So all the arguments for veganism I found, I agree with nearly all of them. And if I had ever encountered any of it or met a vegan before in my life who took the time to try to do outreach to me or educate me about any of this stuff, I probably would have gone vegan right away.
Yeah.
But just because of the situation I was in, so the cultural isolation of my island, and that compounded with my own social problems, just from growing up with autism. So I had very little social contact with the outside world. So I just didn't experience any of that. And for nearly 24 years of my life, I never met a vegan or heard anything true about it, only propaganda.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, sure. I
from
mean,
that to John,
it was like 36 years for me, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And they say be the activist that you wish you had met
Mhm.
before you went vegan. And I think I am. I mean, I wish
Mhm.
somebody had just gotten in my face and told me the straight up facts, because that's what turned me vegan when I finally got them.
No, that's exactly what I do as well. My activism style is I try to say the things that would have made sense to me or would have impacted me if I had heard them
Yeah.
as a carnist.
And in the style even that would have impacted you, because the thing that
Mhm.
smacked me in the face and got me started was getting an email about
Mhm.
the seal slaughter, the seal hunt every year.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, before I was even vegan, I was so
Mhm.
upset before I made the connection from the seal hunt to veganism, or I knew the
Mhm.
rest of the facts about dairy and all. I didn't know about all that stuff. But I was so upset
Yeah.
about the seal hunt when I found out before I even went vegan. I had made up a whole printout and was giving
Mhm.
out flyers like a couple years before I even went vegan. But I even actually found a write
Mhm.
up that I did about the seal slaughter, because people. That's when I started to
Mhm.
realize I was being lied to about things, because you hear about the seal hunt and you think, oh, well, fishermen, indigenous people, blah blah blah. And I read into
Mhm.
it and I found out that actually a majority of the people taking part in the seal hunt aren't even indigenous people. They're off-season
Mhm.
fishermen making extra money,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, it's the commercial seal hunt here. I
yes.
prepared like 3 pages of stuff about the seal hunt to go on and on about here. A couple of years ago, right before I left for Portugal, actually, we had a group here called Save Our Seals
Yeah.
that some friends of mine organized, and we actually did a video. It's probably still on YouTube against the seal hunt coming from Newfoundlanders. So if anyone ever speaks against the seal hunt here, you're considered automatically to be like some misinformed
Creators.
outsider who is attacking Newfoundland
Yeah.
culture.
And people always
So
try to make it out to be an
uh,
indigenous thing. It's for the indigenous
mhm.
people. They need to do it. But no, I mean, the
No,
majority
no.
of people that are taking part in it are not indigenous at all. So,
Yeah, no, it's all cultural appropriation here.
yeah.
Like we don't
Yeah.
actually have indigenous people on the island anymore.
So tell us about this group.
Okay, so it's a group I participated in about 6 years ago, maybe 5 6 years ago, right before I left for Portugal, and the group is called Save Our Seals. So it was a group of Newfoundlanders speaking out against the seal hunt here, and we're giving some educational information about it. So the seal hunt it's a dying, like it's an unprofitable industry. The only reason it still exists is because it's heavily subsidized by the government. The government pays for it with our tax dollars,
Yep.
but the people here they rally around it as a symbol of cultural pride. So
Yep.
they go out of their way to purchase and show off sealskin products. You see sealskin boots and purses, and essentially it's virtue signaling for them. They're to them it's a way to show pride and defend their culture and their traditions. So if you don't conform to this, if you oppose hunting or fishing or in particular sealing, so that's the hill that Newfoundlanders have chosen to die on, is the sealing industry. And we question, why are you choosing that hill to die on? It's they take it as an attack on their cultural identity. So
it's just like the dairy industry here,
yeah.
subsidized.
Mhm.
People like
Yeah.
can't get rid of it because it's like some kind of symbol of their heritage and they're proud of it. And it's like,
Right, but here it's even worse. Just the frenzy about it. It's because most of the outside world doesn't support the seal hunt, so they're like rallying together as
so they're
it's
just trying
a
to be
noble
defiant.
tribe who's defending themselves against the encroaching, like the encroaching. It's basically they think
We
that
will
they're
not
like the Native
conform. We'll be
Americans. Yeah.
defiant. Yeah.
So they think they're like the Native Americans whose culture is being, you know, torn apart and destroyed and replaced with mainstream culture.
How
They're
ironic
putting themselves in that camp. Yeah.
they actually wiped them out
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, yeah. We used to have a Native American tribe called the Beothics, and in about so the colonizers, the first colonizers, Newfoundland, they invaded and they just wiped them all out. The Beothics went extinct in 1829. That's when the last one died in St. John's.
What kind of
Um,
actions do you guys do? Are you still active? I mean, do you still or is it
um,
just is it just unsafe to do your actions?
uh, with the seal hunts, it is very difficult. So the the stigma against like if you're anti-sealing here, it's you're instantly branded like an outsider. You're a traitor. You're a
Yeah.
traitor to Newfoundland culture, and you're treated instinctively with extreme hostility. It's like a conditioned response. If you're against the seal hunt, you're anti-Newfoundlander, and you don't understand, and you're misinformed with propaganda from PETA and other animal rights groups who don't know what they're talking
Those
about, and
American
you're
tree huggers.
yeah, or you're a hypocrite too. So if when we did our actions against the seal hunt, the very first thing anyone says is, "Well, you're a hypocrite with your your leather clothes, and you'll speak out against the seal hunt and then go home and eat a steak or a burger. How is that any different?" And my
They don't
response
realize
is,
you're
"It's not
vegan.
different." Yeah, they don't even. It's unfathomable that veganism is actually a thing. Like, it doesn't even occur to them that
Yeah.
vegans would exist. So I did experience something very similar when I was in Portugal, and that was the obsession around bullfighting. So in Spain and Portugal, bullfighting is very big there, and
Oh yeah.
it's a point of cultural pride. They see it as a symbol of cultural identity. If you don't support it, it's seen as betrayal, or it's seen as like the Westerner looking down on the cultural traditions of someone else,
And
and
how horrible is it
you
that
don't have the right
this
to
really
speak about it.
happens in every culture,
Yeah.
really? Because you can go pretty
Mhm.
much anywhere and it's something in
Yeah,
their
so
culture.
that is one thing I did appreciate, that I thought it was just Newfoundland that
Yeah,
was like this,
yeah.
about like being so prideful and narcissistic about their culture and their values and their identity. But
And
everywhere you go, it's the
yeah,
same thing, just about some other arbitrary value.
exactly. And when you see it that
So,
way, you see how incredibly childish
yeah.
and really just pathetic that is
Mhm.
that that we want to hold on to
Mhm.
identities connected with being cruel.
Yeah, so the
You
the
know,
obsession with the seal hunt here,
it's
it's
such an
exactly the
ego
same
thing,
thing. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing as
and
the
it's the
obsession
world
with the
over.
bullfighting. Hmm. In
Yeah,
the southern United States, you got your obsession with rodeos and that kind of thing.
yeah,
In
Texas
Japan, they
or
have their
yeah,
obsession with killing dolphins
yeah,
or the whale hunt.
yeah.
Same with in Scandinavia, so they have their
Yep,
obsession
the
with whaling
Faroe
as well.
Islands. Yep.
You know.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Mhm.
It's just it's really the same shit, different place is what it is. If you
Yeah,
it really comes down to, I
yeah,
don't know.
it's
Anyway, it's the same the world over. Yeah.
yeah, it's really they're doubling down on.
Oh
So
yeah.
because it's cruelty, they they're sort of too far in now. In order to change their mind, they would have to admit that they've been doing something terrible for so long. So they have to double down and defend it to protect their identity, just out of cognitive dissonance.
Yep. And that, you know what, that actually brings me into my next question, because I see that with parents. And I was going to ask you, are any of your friends or family vegan?
Yes. Well, all of my friends are vegan, mostly because I don't make friends with carnists. It's very difficult to be friendly with someone who spends their life hurting your other friends and paying for it and supporting it.
Sure. So and you've built a new family probably with your activism now.
Yeah. So like you can't choose your family the same way you choose your friends.
Sure.
So, but my fiance and all of our friends are vegan. I have a lot of activist friends from Portugal as well.
And your fiance is from Portugal?
Yes. Yeah, we actually met at a Cube of Truth in Lisbon.
Awesome. I was going to ask you, how did you meet? That's wonderful.
Yes, we did a lot of actions together. So the cubes, the Circle of Silence, other social events. So we had seen each other often for maybe about a year without ever really talking to each other, and so eventually we did, and things just went from there.
That's great. See, that's a happy ending I want to hear. That's great.
Yes.
But let me ask, in this kind of a combination question, you can maybe ask her a response as well about your family. You said about your friends, but what about your family? Do you have any friend or family that is vegan? What about her as well? And since she is your fiance now, how does that affect you guys if they are or are not?
So at the start, it was pretty bad when I first went vegan. So my family wasn't so accepting or understanding. So some of my family is okay, but they will go out of their way to avoid bringing it up. They don't want to talk about veganism. They want to ignore it in order to keep the peace.
Yeah.
So I'm not usually invited to family gatherings, especially if they want to have dead animals there. So they'll do it and just not invite me. A couple of family members. So again, because the culture here is so obsessed with hunting and fishing, so I have family members who do that. So they go out and kill animals themselves, and they were very triggered, very, very hostile, and they would argue that veganism is evil. You're a terrible person for being vegan.
How dare you not kill animals? You're evil.
Yeah. So you're actually hurting animals and hurting the ecosystem with veganism, and
you're hurting animals by not killing them.
Yeah, my dad thinks that if everyone was vegan, they want cows and pigs and chickens to go extinct.
So how does your family feel now? I mean, you just said how you've had a lot of problems. Like I don't know, siblings, parents. I don't know your situation, but now that, for example, you're an activist, you've been vegan for a while, you now have a fiance who's also an activist. So you're going to be combining families. What is that going to be like? What's the dynamic right now?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't know of anyone in either of our families who is vegan, but it's over the years, it's gotten a bit better. So my family's a bit more accepting, and I like to think maybe I've had a bit of a positive influence on them after giving them, information slowly over the years and having some discussions and fights. So bit by bit, I think it's getting better. And they, so like, for example, if I visit my mother, she will always make sure that all of our food is vegan. So she's learned to do vegan cooking for when we visit. She knows that we don't tolerate animal products. We won't eat with them if they're going to eat dead animals there. So she's been a bit more accepting of that. I have two brothers, and I think one of my brothers, his wife, as soon after I first went vegan, they were like, speciesism is the correct way to behave. Like we agree with speciesism, and we will never be vegan. And it's human nature to exploit and kill each other and animals. So they were very, very proud of their carnism. And they're like, yeah, we're carnists. We agree with that. We think speciesism is right, and we'll never be vegans. And that was 6 years ago, maybe. And then when I visited home last Christmas, so before moving back, I visited home and was talking with them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're almost vegans now." They over the years they're like, maybe they had done research, or maybe because of what I told them, they were a bit more open to, when that information came along, maybe they were more able to see it and not be so prejudiced against it. So a lot of
maybe
people,
they also saw that you were sticking to your
brush off
guns.
yeah, maybe. But I like to think that maybe they were a bit more open. So after those initial fights, maybe it planted some seeds. Maybe they were open to more information over the years.
What I meant by sticking to your guns is they saw that it wasn't some kind of silly phase or phase or that you were going through that they could tease you about and it'd be over. It's like now they realize they got to take this seriously. Maybe there's something behind it. Maybe they did look into it because of that.
Okay, yeah. Well, my there is a lot of negative stigma about vegans here too. So I think my brother told me that veganism is an excuse to be a psychopath or a misanthrope. So you're vegan because you, in order to avoid being a hypocrite, you have to choose to either be a vegan or a cannibal. And since you can't be a cannibal because you would get caught and go to jail, therefore you're choosing veganism just out of logical consistency, but you don't actually really care.
Wow.
About anyone's
mental
rights.
Gymnastics on that one.
Yeah, so I've heard that a lot. There's two.
You know what you should have told him? You should have told him nobody's caught me yet.
Yeah. So we talked about it. If as soon as you say you're vegan, you're instantly relegated to one of two camps. And one is, you're some insane delusional hippie or some urbanite. Here they're called townies. So people from the rural areas call people from the city townies.
Yeah.
Like you're removed from nature and from living off the land. And you think that animal products are going to pollute your soul with negative spiritual energy or something. And the only reason you avoid animal products is for personal purity, and you don't actually care about animals. And they think, and I've heard arguments. So vegans don't actually care about animals, and they harm animals because they don't care about supporting the balance of the natural ecosystem the same way hunters do. Hunters care all about the balance of the ecosystem.
You know what's so funny about that? Hunters have zero to do with the balance of the natural ecosystem. Yeah. They're the ones who fuck it up.
No, but everyone here thinks that hunters are great champions of the ecosystem, and they're preserving life somehow and preserving the balance. And
they're the ones that create the imbalance. But
yeah. And vegans want animals to go extinct and hate the wild.
But I need to move along here on our questions. You kind of answered my next question, which would be, would you say it's easy or hard to be vegan where you live? You're basically telling me it's hard, and I hear why. I hear your struggles and why, but I mean, but I also mean on multiple levels. Like as far as like food, though, I mean, which is a decision we make 3 times a day. Now, I'm understanding your social struggles and your family struggles and all that. It's obviously hard in that way, and I think you know what, you have a lot in common with a lot of places in the world. Some people have it just a tiny bit easier than others. It would depend on maybe your area, maybe your family, maybe the mindset. maybe what the local agriculture is. But so it is hard. We have struggles. But as far as like the practical, I can never say that word, practical part, I'll just say practical part of veganism, as far as making the decision 3 times a day what to eat, how easy is it? Do you have grocery stores that have all the alternatives? Do you have, can you go in and get toiletries, and can you get fake leathers? Do you have all that stuff available to you where you live?
It is here, but you might have to put in some effort to find it, and it's going to be marked up a lot as well. So it's going to be expensive to get that stuff.
So what do you basically, when you go in grocery shopping, do you get Beyond Burgers or do you get lentils?
Well, we'll get Beyond Burgers sometimes, but again, like if you're going to buy processed food here, that's expensive, whether it's Beyond Burgers or dead animal flesh. So all of it is expensive. If you want to eat cheaply, then it's going to be root vegetables, lentils, and beans. Potatoes. Those are the only cheap foods here.
Do you have any like exclusively vegan cafes there? Do you have any vegan options at the restaurants that you go to? What's it like as far as that goes?
There aren't a whole lot of vegan restaurants. So,
but do you have any?
Yeah, we do have some. One restaurant I would recommend is called the Green Kitchen. So it's run by some activist friends of mine. And as far as I know, it's the only fully vegan restaurant in St. John's. Okay. And the cafe there has a strong animal rights message. So they give out pamphlets, they got cards and stickers, they have pictures of animals from sanctuaries on the wall, and they promote other vegan businesses there. They have a bulletin board. And it's just a great social hub for vegan activists to go and be together and have meetings and stuff there. So
support
good for
local, ethical, vegan businesses. Definitely.
Okay. Yes. So the restaurant is called the Green Kitchen.
I'll leave any links that you want to give me to anything you've mentioned during our talk.
Sure.
Will be including your social media links and that of your fiance, if you'd like, below the video when it airs. So
sure.
Just so everybody knows, look below.
Okay. Yeah.
But go ahead. So what were some of the other places?
Okay. So yeah, Green Kitchen is for the vegan activist vibe. So it's the only vegan activist restaurant. Okay. So that supports animal rights messages. For plant-based food, like if you want tasty vegan food, my favorite place is called Peaceful Loft, and it's on Duckworth Street in downtown St. John's.
It's called what?
Peaceful Loft.
Peaceful Loft. Okay.
It's an Asian restaurant. It's family owned, and it has a really nice Buddhist theme. So it's peace and Buddhism themed. The owner is actually an immigrant. I think he's from Macau, and I think he spent time in Hong Kong as well. He's very friendly. He always has lots of really interesting stories. So if you go there, he'll be happy to tell you all about his adventures before he moved here. I think I asked him once. He said the reason he chose Newfoundland is because it's considered to be one of the most peaceful places in the world, at least for humans. So
I was going to say he didn't hear about the seal hunt, I guess.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
But yeah, we can talk about that in a bit. The dualism of the culture of peace and acceptance here. So it is peaceful for humans. Like there's not much crime, and people pride themselves on being very friendly to human visitors. But unfortunately, they don't extend that compassion to animals.
Sure.
But anyway, I digress. So yeah, he has lots of great stories at the Peaceful Loft, and the dishes are really, really tasty. So the dishes are all vegan, I believe, and he has really tasty sauces and mock meats. So the chefs there are really skilled. So I'd really recommend visiting there at least once, ordering Yeah, he has the like mock duck and mock pork, all made from gluten or seitan, and it's all really delicious stuff.
Awesome. Now, I was going to ask you how people view animal rights where you live, but
Mhm.
you basically have given us the lowdown on that. So I'm just going to go ahead and
Yeah.
ask you, what's your favorite form of activism? And while we're touching on that, didn't I hear something about your
Mhm.
first NARD event coming up?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to open with that. So we are holding the National Animal Rights Day in St. John's for the first time. So yeah, you have a NARD shirt on.
Yep,
So I assume you already know about the NARD. Yeah,
I know
it's where
about
they
the
have
NARD.
the
I actually
it's where they have the
did an interview in
Mhm.
Alaska. One of the girls did their NARD there. So
Yeah. So yeah, it's where we have the ceremony to commemorate the billions of animals who have lost their lives at human hands this year, but also there's the celebration to celebrate our animal friends who are with us and are living free on sanctuaries or in our homes, and also the activist community and all of the successes and advances we've made this year in moving towards a cruelty-free world. And it's the 11th NARD worldwide, so they've been doing it for 11 years. But in St. John's, it's going to be our first one. So we're getting that tradition started. And so I agreed to be the main organizer of that this year. So I'm trying to put everything together. It's going to be probably a smaller event because it's our first time and we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So
you'll
we
make a
probably
big
won't get
impact.
a
You'll
yeah,
make
we
a big
probably
impact.
won't get a big turnout, and we won't have actual animal bodies there. We're going to use posters,
Yeah.
but we're still going
I
to do the
haven't been to one
ceremony
yet that
and the
actually has the
decoration.
bodies. I don't know if I can handle
Yeah,
that or not, to be honest with
yeah,
you.
yeah. It is really difficult and
But
requires a
it's
lot more
nevertheless
preparation.
impactful.
Yeah, it would be a lot more impactful if we were able to get them, but here it might be almost impossible or very difficult to get some bodies.
Yeah.
So they
Sounds morbid
yeah.
just saying that,
Yeah, yeah, it's
but we
terrible.
understand why. We understand why. Um,
Yeah, animals aren't given a funeral here
yeah. But
in almost any
congratulations
context.
on taking that on,
Hmm.
and more
Thanks. Yeah,
power to you. I hope that you make a huge impact. And
yeah. It's the first thing I'm trying to organize myself since being here. So I
yeah,
did join to be an organizer with St. John's Animal Save, but that's more of a group effort,
yeah.
and it was already established when I moved back here.
Well,
But
good
yeah,
for
the NARD
you
is the
taking
first
that on.
project I'm really taking the reins on here. But I hope that over time we will develop the activist community and grow to do more
Yeah,
events and have more people.
yeah. What people need is people to
Mhm.
inspire them, like you and the rest of the activists. They're there already. Stay strong
Yeah.
in the face of adversity, in the face of the consensus, or what's the word I'm looking for? The usual opinion. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but
Maybe
just stay strong. Just
stigma,
stay
propaganda, discrimination,
the same old,
prejudice.
same old.
Yeah.
You're
Mhm.
feeling it maybe a little more concentrated because of the area that you're in, because you are on an island in a way.
Yeah, yeah. The tribal identity
Yeah,
aspect is really amplified here.
it feels
Um,
maybe a bit more isolated where you're at, but more power to you
well,
for that.
uh,
You
so
get a lot
we
of
should
people
have.
that come in from the mainland that help at your events.
No, not usually, not many. Um, we should have opened with this when you were talking about the history of Newfoundland, but
Okay.
in terms of the culture, like it does have very strong Celtic roots. It's all mix of Irish, Scottish, Viking ancestry, and a little bit of Portuguese culture too, because we are the most eastern part in North America,
Yep.
and Portugal is the most western part of Europe.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we always had Portuguese boats coming in and trading and fishing, unfortunately, over the centuries. So some of their culture sort of leaked in to Newfoundland. But Newfoundland actually was its own country until 1949. So until about 70 years ago, Newfoundland was a country separate from Canada, and so they had a lot of national pride and their own culture and their own identity. And then in 1949, they voted to join Confederation with Canada, and that's when they merged with Labrador to be one province. And I even think the vote to join Confederation, it was very close. It was something like 51% voted to join,
49.
and 49% voted to stay their own country.
Wow.
And we even still have a separatist movement here in Newfoundland as well that want to secede and be their own country again. So there's, it's very conservative, very traditional values, and it's not very progressive. There's not a lot of access to differing viewpoints or information. There's not a lot of diversity, and that culture is completely separate from the rest of Canada. So it has a unique culture with Newfoundland specific pride and Newfoundland specific nationalism, because we still have people alive. So the senior citizens here, some of them are old enough that they were born before Newfoundland joined Canada when it was still its own country. So there's a lot of that pride, and some people even have resentment from joining Canada.
Well, you got plenty of pubs, so I'm not taking that away, right?
Yeah, Irish pubs everywhere.
All right, so what about what's your favorite vegan dish? I want to ask you that. What's your favorite vegan dish, or what's your favorite dish that can be easily veganized? Like, it doesn't have to be traditionally vegan.
Okay, yeah, there is a traditional meal here called Jig's Dinner.
Jig's Dinner.
Jig's Dinner, yeah, it's very, very popular Newfoundland dish, and people eat it around Christmas time, Thanksgiving, or any Sunday. So I think it's may even be based on a Portuguese dish or an Irish dish or some mixture of them. But it's a lot of root vegetables. So you got your carrots, potatoes, and cabbage. You got collard greens, so like the green part from the top of turnips, I think. Spinach, and they have gravy and dressing or stuffing. So like a bread mixed with
basically a hot spices. Mess like anybody else would make. That sounds good.
And, also something called peas pudding, which is made from soaking lentils or split peas.
Okay.
So you have the lentils and split peas in a bag, and you put them in a pot and boil them until they become mush. And that's peas pudding.
Oh,
they have all that together.
That's simple enough. I can do that.
The mix of root vegetables and gravy and stuffing and bread, and you put the gravy all over it, and you have the peas pudding. And unfortunately, it does include probably something like dead turkey flesh or salted pig flesh. So
they always got to throw that in there somehow, right?
Yeah, they throw it in there.
You can easily do it without.
Yeah, we like to use stuffed mushrooms instead. So take some big portobello or oyster mushrooms, stuff them full of dressing, put the gravy on them. Or you can do something like marinate tofu or another vegan meat in the vegetable broth or in brine. So really easy to get alternatives for that. And the base of it, most of it is vegan anyway, the root vegetables and gravy.
Yeah. Just don't ruin it with throwing in some flesh or
don't put dead animal juices in the gravy. You just use a vegetable based gravy instead. I love mushroom gravy.
Yeah, exactly. So if a vegan visits where you live, though, where should they go? That doesn't have to be a restaurant. We've already talked about restaurants. Is there any places that you particularly like to go, or you think people should visit while they're there, whether that be for, I don't know, activism, or to just learn about the island, or or just to enjoy themselves?
Yeah, well, we do have some relevant cultural attractions here. We have Cabot Tower. So there's this rocky cliff, like a high point on the island near the east coast, and we have Cabot Tower there. And I think that was where the first cross-Atlantic phone transmission, so like the telegraph transmission.
Yes, I read about that.
Yeah, from Western Europe to Cabot Tower.
I almost read that as a fact during the beginning, but I'm glad you brought that up. Yep.
Yeah, so they have a little museum set up there. You can go to Cape Spear as well. So Cape Spear is the most eastern point of North America. So
awesome.
If you want to be the closest to Europe you can while still being in North America, you would stand at Cape Spear, and it's up on a big rocky cliff, and look out at the ocean. And that's the closest you'll ever get to seeing Europe.
Wow.
And I have an interesting story that soon after I went to Portugal, there's a beach just south of Lisbon, I believe. That point is the most western point in mainland Europe. So I looked at the Atlantic Ocean from both sides.
You've been both.
Those 2 points are the closest, like between Cape Spear and that beach in Portugal is the closest. Like if you drew a line, that's the shortest line you would draw between North America and mainland Europe. So not counting the UK, which is its own island. Cátia says it's called Fonte de Telha. That's the name of the beach in Portugal. It's the most western part of Europe.
Portugal.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's lots of beaches in Portugal.
Yes.
So if anybody comes to your area, tell us, how can they get involved in the local vegan community? How would they do that?
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, I recommend like going to the Green Kitchen or Peaceful Loft. There's also a restaurant called The Sprout, but that's just a vegetarian place. It's not vegan, but it has some good plant-based dishes. We have some Facebook groups as well. So we have one called Vegan on the Rock for ethical vegans. So a nickname for Newfoundland is called The Rock.
Okay. See, I didn't know that. People would not know to look. I mean, somebody like me would not know to look that up if I was looking for vegans there. So that's wonderful to know.
Yeah. So Newfoundland is called The Rock. It's a nickname we have because we are literally a giant rock of an island in the middle of the ocean. Yeah. And so Vegan on the Rock is the Facebook group.
Awesome.
We also have one called NL Vegans.
Okay.
Although that's mostly for plant-based people looking for food tips. So if you want to find vegan food, you would go there, but they shy away from the activism scene in that group. So they're not that
that's all too common in any groups that say where they're at vegan. So no, pretty much anywhere you go, it's like insert place here, vegans. It's going to just be people talking about food.
Yeah. If you post an animal rights message,
they go mad.
Try to get people to join, an outreach demo. It's pretty much ignored there.
It's either ignored or you are basically lynched. People just go off on you.
They're very focused on smoothing things over with the humans, more so than the animals. But it's unfortunate.
Never change the world, so.
I would recommend visiting Green Kitchen. So again, the owners are vegan activists, and they can get you in touch with the activist group. Perfect. Or just message one of us personally on Facebook. We do have a private group for the activists, and that's reserved for people that we do know and trust. Okay. That aren't like trying to sabotage us or
sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Spies for animal agriculture or something, because that does happen too. Or
we don't even need to give a link to that. I mean, if people really want to get involved, they're that serious and they're going that deep into it, then they can get to know you and go through you.
Yeah, so visit Green Kitchen or message one of us on Facebook and say you.
And we'll again have links below here for people.
Yeah, ask in Vegan on the Rock about how to get involved, and the people there will direct you to one of the activists in the activist group.
All right, that's great. So I want to ask you one final question before we get out of here, because we have been on here for a little while, and I know it's getting later for both of us. So, finally, where would you like to visit one day and learn about veganism there?
Um, I've heard that Israel is considered to be the vegan capital of the world, so it might be interesting and refreshing to visit there someday, and not feel the sense of the constant oppression and stigma against veganism that we have here. So maybe that might be nice. There'd be a lot of vegan options, and probably a big vegan community. I'd like to see how that feels, maybe. But we have that sense of oppression and stigma. But at the end of the day, the animals, they suffer a million times worse than that. And my mentality is that if we feel discomfort, if we feel oppressed and we feel stigmatized as vegans in a situation or place, while still being human. So this is definitely where the animals need us the most. And we're feeling a small fraction of what they're going through. That's what I think. If we're feeling it, it's because the animals are feeling it a million times worse, and we're getting a little taste of that being thrown into the camp with them, sort of. As the way that's Carnist ideology, like this violent doctrine, rejects and commodifies and oppresses animals. By choosing to go against that, we're putting ourselves in there with the animals, and we experience a little fraction of that. Yeah. So if we experience it, that's where we need to go. It's where animals need us the most. It's also where we have the most potential to make an impact. So I think we should be there. I found that places like Canada, like the Scandinavian countries. So I'd like to go to like the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, maybe. I'd like to go to Japan as well. These places are known for having very, very high standards of living and very advanced in terms of human rights. But that advancement for human rights somehow comes with the opposite, like it comes at the expense of animal rights and recognizing their value. So it's like that. What you do is, in order to put humans up, is by comparing them to animals and lowering non-human animals down in status to elevate humans above them. Yeah. And these places with advanced human rights, they're further behind in terms of animal rights than other places in the Western world. And I think it comes directly from a sense of human supremacy. They got animals lower and humans on this divine pedestal at their expense, and they're very, very reluctant to put any restrictions on what humans can do. Like, human agency is considered sacred. Like, they have this absolute, this protected right to their free will and to do whatever they want that can't be challenged. So as long as they don't interfere with other humans' interests, they should be able to do whatever they want. And that includes to violate the interests of non-humans. So you got this huge discrepancy in the culture for very high standard of human rights, and that comes by lowering the standard of animal rights, because you're putting humans in that position where you can't infringe on their personal choice to infringe on the personal choice of animals. And I think that's where we have the biggest potential to do something about it. It's an opportunity. As humans in those places, we have the most extensive level of privilege of any group. So humans are the most privileged group on the planet, and as opposed to non-human animals, which are the most disadvantaged and marginalized group on the planet. So I think we're obligated to use our human privilege to try to change that and make the world a better place for animals. And I think that those countries are where human privilege is at its strongest, give the biggest opportunity to work towards closing that gap and recognizing the sentience and the rights and interests of non-humans. And even if it starts out just by proxy, so for example, in those places, I think veganism is recognized and protected as a belief system, on par with religions. So we're sort of using their the human supremacist ideology, and divinity of human choice and human agency against them to, at least until we can get animals the proper recognition, like their own interests, their own needs, and their own rights to live on their own terms and not be exploited and suffer and be killed for human whims. Until we can get there, the very least thing we can do is use our own privilege to protect them. If they're going to say, veganism is a protected right for humans, then we can sort of try to give some of that by proxy to the animals. So
yeah,
I think that activism has the most potential in those countries. So in Japan and the Scandinavian countries and here in Canada, that's where we're needed most, and we're going to make the most difference in the least time. So yeah, those are the countries I would like to visit, and it's part of the reason I came back to Canada, because Canada is more advanced in terms of how they value human rights and human diversity as well. So now we just need to extend that to recognizing that the diversity in species is the same thing.
Awesome. All right, Mike. Well, you know what? I really appreciate this conversation tonight. It's been really deep, actually. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the conversation. Can I ask you, the vegan Aspie, is that maybe what you go by on like IG or something?
Yeah, I have an Instagram, but it's not really active. So I haven't used it in years. I'm much more focused on actual street activism now.
Sure.
So I
was just
used to do a
curious
lot
about the
of
moniker
social
there.
media activism. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe I'll get back into it again. So try to go at it from all angles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right now I do have my hands full with in-person street activism.
Sure.
I'd really love to do direct action, like actual animal rescues too, like open rescues, slaughterhouse disruptions, maybe work on an animal sanctuary to actually take care of animals and get to interact with them face to face as individuals. That really helps. I'd recommend anyone to do that, actually, to make a personal connection with a non-human animal, so you can start to undo some of that.
Everyone should. I'm involved in my local sanctuaries as well.
Yeah.
So, well, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to go ahead and say goodnight.
Sure.
It's getting a little late here, and I've got boarding dogs that I need to pick up. That is kind of one of my jobs. So, thank you so much for having this talk with me this evening and taking the time out of your day and your schedule. And you know what? I wish you the greatest success with the NARD event coming up. I wish you the greatest success with any events that you guys do there, and the most strength that you can muster, because it sounds like a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
One thing I would also like to get started be maybe a group like specifically advocating for animals from an autism advocate's perspective.
That would be great.
People to recognize the similarities of discrimination based on neurotype, like neurodivergence.
Yeah.
So how some humans think and are intrinsically different in some ways. It's like a shadow of the differences that humans have with other species.
I think that would be
experiencing
fantastic
the same thing that animals do to a lesser degree.
Yeah, if you were
Um,
to spearhead something like that, I think that would
yeah, I personally think
be
that
something
every autistic
very
person
needed.
should be vegan. When you discriminate against animals and oppress them, you're contributing to your own oppression and discrimination as well.
Yep, I
Animals
agree.
are much more like us than,
Yep,
in terms of what they face.
yeah. All right, Mike, I'm going to let you go. And
Okay, yes,
I
yeah,
get,
it was great talking to you. Thanks
yeah,
for
you
having me.
too.
I got through about half of the points I had prepared, but it's okay.
That's all
I had a
right.
lot more
People
stuff I
can
wanted to
learn
get through.
more from the links that you gave
Mhm.
me that will be included beneath the video. So, and hopefully you and I will keep in touch, and I'll get to see where you're headed next and how your events are going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
All right. Well, you have a great evening, and
Okay. Yes. You too.
I will talk to you soon. I hope.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye bye
All
now.
right. Yes.
All right. Wow, Mike was a fantastic guest and very knowledgeable about everything. Incredible. That's all I can say is I know so much about Newfoundland now. Interesting place that I wasn't sure that I was going to go to, but it really is it's not that far away, and I feel like going there for nothing more than to support their their activism and of course to meet the wonderful activists that are strong enough to do it there. So everyone who watched, thank you so much. I hope you did enjoy um, going to St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada with me, and come and see who's going to be next week. If you want to know who that is, you've got to come and see. I'll be here next week. All right, love you. Bye.